All right, good evening, everyone. Is the microphone on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope you're warming up a little bit. So hi to those of you joining us online. We had a bit of a fire alarm emergency, so we're starting a little late. But we do still have a jam-packed program tonight, so we might be staying a little late. In the first half of the evening, we have... How does this work? Okay. We have, of course, the Ottawa skies, and we have a special guest, Sharon Odell. Now, Mrs. Odell is a graduate student at Carleton, and tonight she's presenting her master's work on the Dominion Observatory in Ottawa. And so in the second half, we might have a really short break. In the second half, we're going to have a General Assembly update. The GA tickets are now on sale, so we're going to have more info about that. And as for Paul's talk, we'll see if we have time. So we'll finish off with our usual observations and door prizes. So there are a few new members in the last month. We have Rory Lang, Amanda Riddell, Marc Legrand, Brooke Yitna, as well as Sharon Odell and her family. So Delaney, Gary, Maeve, Stephen, and William. Let's give them a warm welcome. So we do have a few members in the news. Tim, if you want to come talk to this. So, new button, this button.
Ah, yes. Sorry, which one?
The big one.
The big one. Oh, that should be easy. Okay, folks. I have an interesting question for all of you, which was, when did Paul Commission get his service award? And I feel like most of us, you will probably say, well, I don't know, but it must have been a long time ago. Except there's one little problem. It wasn't. We actually never actually gave him one. Yeah, exactly. That was my reaction, too. Just to give you a little rundown, from 1990 to 2004, he did 15 years of presenting the cutting edge of astronomy. 1987 to 88, counselor. 91 to 93, national rep. 91, vice president. 92 to 93, president. Counselor from 95 to 96. And then there was, all the stuff for which, we named the Observer of the Year award after him. And when it finally kind of hit us that, dudes, we never actually gave him a service award. Oops. So, Paul, I hope you're watching. He can't make it here this evening, but I hope you're watching, and I hope you'll forgive us. So, thank you muchly. You deserve it. And we're sorry.
All right, so next up we've got our own Gary Boyle, who was on CTV Morning Live about a month ago speaking about the latest NASA discovery. And finally, our very own Joe Bonner had his picture featured in the May-June edition of Sky News. So it's that picture on top. And we've got a close-up here. So congrats, Joe. And so let's move on to Ottawa skies.
So we've got a new remote?
Yeah.
The big button?
Big button.
Big button. There we go. Okay, good evening, folks. Let's take a look at what's happening in the Ottawa skies this month. First of all, these are the moon phases, and the full moon is on April 11th. It's also known as the Paschal full moon. And this is the first full moon after the vernal equinox, or the spring equinox, and as the last one was on March the 12th. What's important about this particular moon is how we set the date for Easter. Easter is defined as the first full moon after March 21st. As long as it doesn't fall on a Sunday, then it's a week later. So that got me to thinking, okay, well, how early can Easter be? Well, obviously, if it falls on the 21st, it can't be on that. So March 22nd is the earliest Easter can be. And that was in 1818. Most of us won't be around for the next early Easter in 2285. And in 1943, the Paschal full moon fell on Sunday, causing Sunday, April the 18th. Because it fell on a Sunday, they had to push it out a week. And so Easter was on April the 25th. The next time this happens, some of us younger folks will still be alive in 2038. Okay, so we have a few things happening this month. We have the Laird's Meteor Shower, April 22nd overnight to the 23rd, and about 20 meteors per hour. And there'll be a small crescent moon, so it shouldn't impact the viewing too much. Best time to watch them is after midnight on the 23rd. And now I'll push the right button. There we go. Okay, so we've got a comet that is becoming visible. Could be magnitude +7. I've seen some recent articles coming out where you can actually see it with the naked eye, certainly with binoculars. The path is shown on the screen here, and it was discovered as an asteroid in 2015 and was later shown to exhibit a coma and was renamed a comet. Moving quickly through the planets, Mercury is not visible in April. Venus is visible in the evening sky at the first part of the month, and Mars is visible in the early evening all month. Jupiter is visible all month, and it's at opposition on April the 7th. Saturn is visible in the early morning. Uranus is visible first part of the month in the early evening, and Neptune is visible in the last part of the month in the early morning. In the past, I've sort of given you the best date for an iridium flare, but it's not particularly effective giving you the best date because it's a very narrow field of view. So I want to just quickly touch on how you can calculate iridium flares over your area. Just a reminder that these are quickly going away as they replace all the satellites, so you've got about a year to figure this out. The way I do it is I use Google Maps. I bring up my Google Map, I right-click on my address or the location where I'm doing my viewing, and I click on what's here. It then brings up the little box that you see at the bottom here with the exact longitude and latitude. And then all you do is you simply go to the heavens above and plug in the longitude and latitude there. If you select Ottawa, you're right in downtown Ottawa, and it's not as accurate. For the iridium flare is a very narrow band. So anyway, something for you to take a look at. International Space Station, best viewing date is April the 12th at 8:28 in the evening through to 8:34 in the evening. There's the path of the International Space Station. And there's your cartoon for the month. Thank you.
All right, so without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Sharon Odell. Now, I believe Tim wanted to give you a short introduction, though, on how this came to be.
I thought you were standing me up.
So for those of you that are into history and observatories, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, this should be definitely a treat. And as Kelly had noted, Sharon and the family are now members, so this isn't even a guest talk. Sharon's actually been involved with museum and related stuff for a long career. She has a diploma in modern in applied museum studies and her bachelor's degree from Carleton. And as Kelly had mentioned, this will serve as her master's degree dissertation this evening. This is regarding, well, I won't give too much of it away, but this is regarding the Dominion Observatory. And Sharon had contacted the RASC for some information. And the rest is, well, history. Now, minor detail, folks. Since this is actually part of her formal master's requirements, there is a strict time limit on it, so I will have to insist that we keep the comments and questions off completely, and you'll be doing a question and answer session at the end, I believe. So, enjoy, and we can wait for our soon-to-be anointed master's degree person. And I totally botched that, but Sharon, come on up. logo, of course. How could I forget? Well, it's because I'm a flaming idiot. Yes, the logo that's about to come up. Do I have to do this, Chris, or are you doing it? Ah, yes. Our last General Assembly, yes, over 10 years ago, was for the centenary of the Ottawa Centre. And you may recognize the observatory under the Aurora Borealis and the Big Dipper, even though you wouldn't see it in that orientation, but, well, artistic license. So, it fits perfectly into what Sharon is going to tell us about. And now I really will disappear.
Okay. Bear with me here. So we'll begin. When the first National Dominion Observatory of Canada opened in Ottawa in April of 1905, its function was to mirror that of the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, to become an institutional resource for all. Canadians used this for timekeeping, railway, and survey requirements. Its architecture, likewise, the high Romanesque revival style, was chosen to visually highlight the national importance of the science of astronomy. Today, the same architecture still holds great national, local, and social significance on a North American level that is often still compared to other observatory histories around the world. And thankfully, this building's legacy has been preserved in part to the keen foresight of the last self-taught astronomer who worked there, Mary Gray. As many already know, there has been past literature written on this observatory in addition to Ms. Gray's. The past chief of seismology and then later director of the Earth Physics branch of Energy Mines and Resources, EMR, Dr. John Hodgson, before his retirement in 1979, wrote the first two-volume history on the building titled The Heavens Above and the Earth Beneath, a history of the Dominion observatories. While researching through archival fonds on the observatory, it was found that Hodgson also corresponded with Richard Jarrell, a graduate study student during the 1970s. Who went ahead and published articles on this observatory within the Journal for the History of Astronomy. However, tonight, I will focus on the architecture of this building within its surrounding location of the National Historic Canadian Experimental Farm, the CEF, in relation to Ms. Gray's career. Also, I will further examine how the structure became a part of Gray's scientific research before its function changed between 1971 and 1973, to that of EMR, branch of seismology. In addition, I will trace the life of the observatory building that after Gray's tenure was completed in 1972, in order to discuss her strong advocacy for the preservation of the tools that once encompassed her trade. While working at the observatory, Gray led public and educational tours within the building, and she continued to advocate for it when she became a curator at the Canadian Science and Technology Museum. As a vocal and recognized member of the community, and as a Royal Astronomical Society of Canada past member and president, Gray was able to successfully raise awareness of this unique building and its inherent value to Canada. In addition, she enabled stronger external recognition of the observatory through the rare examples of Canada's first historical telescopes through her support in scientific work. And while doing so, she may also have highlighted the significance of the Dominion Observatory's unpublicized historic role in its staff for mentoring and enabling the first Canadian women scientists to practice physics and astronomy on a national level. This is through the example of Ms. Gray herself and her supervisor, Helen Sawyer-Hogg, who oversaw her here in Ottawa from the Astrophysical Observatory in BC. As well, an example is found of Gray's predecessor, Miriam Burland, who had been the first woman to work at this Ottawa Observatory from 1928 until her retirement in 1968, a few years before Gray's own transfer from there to the museum, which occurred in 1974. The plan to build a national observatory for Canada began in the 1890s. And the famous observatory designed by Christopher Wren in Greenwich was considered a prime example to gain architectural ideas from. The reasoning for this is that generally British architecture had been in the past the go-to ideas since Canada had been its colony.
As well, Wren's Greenwich Observatory design was known to be completed by the first architect who had not only a sound knowledge of the structure of buildings, but also one of the few to combine his knowledge of physics and astronomy with architecture, as he also was a professor of astronomy at Oxford in 1661. The result of the Jacobean style that Wren used at Greenwich was known for being more modern, less ornate and conservative than that of past styles of architecture that mimicked lots of details taken from historic churches. The style allowed this particular observatory to have one of the first visual identifiers of being what can be considered scientific modern look for buildings. However, when architect David Ewart was chosen to be the Dominion architect for many of the important national buildings in the Canadian capital, he decided to not follow Wren's 17th century style of a scientific modern institution. For the foremost reason, the architecture of the new Canadian Observatory was striving to have a visual image of independence from Britain as it moved away from being its colony. Instead, Ewart, who was originally from Scotland, would eventually take a mix of medieval architectural designs from the 11th and 12th century, cathedrals and castles, to create one of many new modern building styles for Canada's own identifying legacy, in a new simplified form of what he thought to be Canada's scientific institutions. Ewart would also need to consider the ideal location that was sought after by the astronomers William King and his colleague Otto Klotz. And the site would be chosen on the Central Experimental Farm, the CEF, and that already had been set aside at Confederation in 1867. The CEF land was for agricultural scientific research, but as the newly formed Canadian government was being created in 1886, the land also was set aside for earth science. Once plans were finalized between Ewart and King in 1902, construction began for the new observatory within the section of CEF landscape known today as the National Resource of Canada, NRCan Buildings, or NRCan Campus for short, located in the northern section of the landscape closest to Carling Avenue. The site was chosen because of its rural area on the outskirts of the city, in order to avoid light pollution and to have the building positioned advantageously in the midst of low-lying farmland so as to be above tree lines and to lend it a visual elevated grandeur. It became an immediate tourist attraction of Canada's scientific pursuits in astronomy, even at the construction phase, as seen with the sale of stereographic images and postcards of this building dating between 1902 to 1909. When the observatory opened in 1905, Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier also noted the achievement at that time of what would be a symbol of Canada's progress in astronomical science as a newly formed country. He also accredited the visual identity of the new buildings that were to represent the nation's progress to the design of Ewart. Ewart, who continued to have a role as Dominion architect in Ottawa from 1896 until 1914, was responsible for many of the federal buildings constructed in the capital. A few of his other well-known examples are of the Royal Canadian Mint, built simultaneously when the observatory was being constructed, and the Dominion Archive off of Sussex Drive. The latter building has now been recently restored as a new museum of global pluralisms, after the War Museum vacated it in 2005. Likewise, Ewart also designed the Victoria Memorial Museum for the Geological Survey of Canada in 1912, which is now the newly renovated Canadian Museum of Nature on McLeod Street. Unlike his predecessors, Thomas Seton Scott and Thomas Fuller, architects, Ewart chose not to work with the neo-Gothic style in this area, but with a baronial mix of Tudor, Gothic revival, and for the observatory, Romanesque revival. It was also to be the second final phase of this kind of architecture and style that was used. These Romanesque elements of design mimic that of the architecture of most medieval cathedrals, such as the famous Lincoln Cathedral, once considered the tallest in the world for almost 200 years, which began construction in 1073. Ewart would take design elements from buildings such as these and then would build them into the original 11th and 12th century Romanesque style, but then would pare them down for his own architectural designs by leaving out much of the decorative and very detailed elements. By doing this, Ewart wanted to exemplify that Canada was not just a Commonwealth of Britain, but a growing independent country, and by borrowing design elements from past cathedrals and castles from the Romanesque period, he hoped to instill a newly built Canadian history that exerted a found modern permanence from the past to then be associated with the progress of science. At the time, Ewart was most likely influenced by the circle of architects led by the American Henry Hobson Richardson. He favored this high style of architecture to meet the requirements for a nation. Therefore, the observatory was executed in a similar taste known as the Richardsonian Romanesque Revival style that was seen throughout North America, which was also named Free Manor. This was due to its characteristically inspired 12th century arched windows that the first Romanesque revival phase of architecture would have had during the late 19th century. However, now in the beginning of the 20th century, Ewart would recreate it even more simplistically with Ottawa's observatory. The architectural trend was also still popularly employed in the design of churches, university campuses, and national institutions in Canada. At the time the observatory was built, even though it had fallen out of favor in Europe, as seen in James Lennox's design of Toronto City Hall in 1890 and Simon and Ray's Ontario Hall in 1902 on Queen's University campus. Chris, can you start that, please? Thank you. Good. The Romanesque Revival's visual language was still one that highlighted importance and durability in its application towards the creation of a Dominion style of buildings in Canada. It achieved this by usage of windows that were often square on lower levels of the building in comparison to the top second-story level windows, which would have top arched elements. This was intended to give the illusion of the component borrowed from tall, long cathedral windows of prominent medieval buildings. However, as seen on the front of the observatory facade, the one length of window pane is also broken up into two, as a new modern segregated form of different levels, that at the same time still draw the viewer's eye up, as if both windows were one tall one. When the style was utilized for the Dominion Observatory, it was applied to the three-story levels of front facade, in which the top windows are arched. From the outside architecture, one can see a poignant visible central domed metal roof, set high above the rounded central arched entry doorway. Other Romanesque Revival style features can be attributed to the heavy castle-like sandstone block walls that also were purposefully designed to exude a sense of nation-building importance, with its heavy appearance that in turn would reflect the serious nature of the science that would be held within it. Ewart's challenge was to design a cultural institution that was not just an understanding for the science, but for that of Canada's specific pursuit of astronomy. The chiseled and pointed reddish-pink sandstone facade of the observatory also exemplifies the expense embedded into these materials. This choice lends a richness of color that still attracts visitors today. When entering the doorway itself, the lentil label of the building stating observatory makes no mistake as to what this building is for. In addition, there is detailed stone carved foliage and columns at each side of the main door, illustrating Roman and Greek motifs which can be compared to ancient classical style of entry door decor from Roman and Greek libraries and temples themselves. Therefore, this visual sense of value in classical art language is transferred to the observatory to highlight the same implication of institutional prestige. Also, these can be seen as subtle visual reminders that remind one of the origins of Roman and Greek astronomy. The ground floor of the building was utilized almost in the same way as it was operated in 1905 until 1970, when the astronomical program closed. The only difference being that in 1905, the larger rooms had not yet been divided into smaller offices to accommodate the later addition of seismology, geomagnetism, and mapping staff. The main floor consisted of a front entranceway with the dome positioned like a central showpiece, as indicated earlier at the center of the front entryway of the building. The shape of the front vestibule area echoes the shape of the domed building, but instead of a full open circular room, a small cylindrical column immediately breaks up the space to those who enter. The smooth beige brick rounded architectural column not only hides the main double entry inner doors to the rest of the building, but also serves as a function for the telescope. For within the column is the concrete pier that would have been well placed into the stable level ground below, all the way to the top third and fourth floors of which the 15-inch retracting telescope would sit. This was crucial architectural design because accuracy required the telescope to sit separate from the rest of the entire building, to be protected by wind and human-made vibration. Today, past seismologist Juan Gur's ceiling mural can be seen, also decorating the entry area, which illustrates astrology's connection to astronomy. The remainder of the main floor of the building was broken up into two wings, consisting of traditional square and rectangular functional rooms, with original tiled flooring that can be seen in the main corridor today. The main staircase at the central back area of the building gives access to the other floors. It balances the design of the building while also dividing into two wings by being a smaller curved area that mimics the front entry where the concrete pier is. The east wing was designed to be shorter than the left in order to accommodate the far left library where most of the documents for research would be held. The time service room would have been located nearby the library on the main level. And as one enters the basement stairwell from the main level, materials used to decorate the inner architecture of this building also give a sense of visible prestige. Marble stairs, large 4 to 5 foot thick windowsills, up to 10 inch high baseboards, and over 10 foot high ceiling space also give a heavy and spacious impression of weightiness and expense. Excuse me. As one enters the basement, the wall curves around to the right where the telescopic concrete pier enters the ground again. Another curved office room is where the wireless room would have been located for transfer of time signals from the telescopic equipment. The west wing holds a central hallway room that divides the area so as to accommodate the main seismograph within it. On either side would be the placement of 5 additional rooms and a ping pong table. The north lower floor rooms were accessible from 2 ends, consisting of the Solar Research Lab, extra workroom, carpentry workshop, and battery room. Beige brick lines the inner spaces. However, in the main corridor and towards the back basement exit to outside, the original stonework can be seen up close. This is the same stone workmanship that can be seen from stereographic images documenting the construction of the observatory from 1902. In the basement of the stonework that makes up the front steps, you can see the underside of the stonework again. The back exit again has stone stairs that are chiseled, and the markings demonstrate the craftsmanship to this day. The change between foundation stone layering and transition to the more red, pinkish, and mixed gray upper level stonework that was seen previously on the facade is also present. Here we see how large this stonework really was. In the foreground, the stereograph image from 1902 to 04. Also in the basement, we see the last level where the elevator is positioned. Installed in 1917 as a later retrofit, it runs on an oil-soaked woven rope that is still maintained today in the same manner. The rope is changed every 10 to 12 years to keep it running. Exterior view of the elevator shaft can be seen easily as it is of the beige stone near the rooftop behind the dome that does not match the remainder of the building. Here is a subsequent image from 1905 that shows the rear of the building and what it would have looked like before the elevator shaft was installed. Here it's impression. The upper second floor contains the drafting room and east end photography. As seen from the rooftop, this floor again follows two distinct wings that branch out, with the center back staircase ending on this floor, but a new front stairwell begins with the dome leading at the front. Ewart's hallmark can be seen in his design of railings in this upper space. From inside, the larger windows with upper arch tops are also easily visible. The west rooms have a view over the library roof of the observatory below, whereas the last east photography studio room has a full wall-to-wall to near ceiling height sized window to allow plenty of natural light that the past official observatory photography would have worked within. These additional window panes were also strategically placed at the back of the building so as to not detract from the central observatory dome's stately appearance from the front facade. The stairwell to the third and fourth floor levels, where the 15-inch telescopic instruments were kept within the dome, become significantly narrow as one climbs them. The third level below the main dome has small windows placed high in the circular outer walls. Reinforced metal posts are centrally placed around the concrete pier that now tapers to the dome above. Another final narrow stairwell allows access to the dome itself. In this image from 1903-04, a view of the concrete pier itself can be seen within the construction behind the front entryway. As seen in the architectural plan here from Ewart, he had to adhere to the needs of the 15-inch refracting telescope that would dictate the size of its 30-foot dome, because it was purchased prior to 1902 when construction began. Therefore, this telescope directly influenced the specific design of the observatory's dome. As seen in subsequent drawing plans, the dome had to accommodate this impressive functional size for its time. In this photo here, the outer metal framework of the dome can be seen during construction phase. This image shows the wooden floating floor that astronomers would walk upon around the 15-inch telescope. This floating wall was mounted to the outer wall architecture, separate from the floor, and separate from the tall central pier of where the actual telescope sat, in order to be unhindered by vibration. The interior walls of the dome were not insulated as part of the functional necessity, allowing the rib cage of the dome and clockwork mechanisms for the roof opening to be seen. Called the cold room, the space was designed to maintain the same temperature as the outside environment no matter what the season. This requirement was so that the telescope would have maintained visual accuracy. with no fogging or frosting up of the lens glass, and later camera equipment built to suit. From the west-north window of the dome, one can see the related structures associated with the observatory. The circular corner platform on the roof would have held the anemometer to measure wind velocity that may affect telescopic readings. The building in the background is Ewart's design for the Geological Survey building, containing seismology staff, built in 1913-14. These two cultural landscape plans of the Central Experimental Farm, Enercan campus grounds, left one from 1889 and the right from 1938, demonstrate the additions of the buildings and equipment as was needed with the observatory's growing needs and functions. This image from 1968, ordered by Dr. Hodgson, shows an aerial view of the campus at its optimal growth, with buildings and telescopic structures in front and behind the observatory building itself. The oldest original example of these exterior buildings was the 1905 large solar Cholestat telescope, considered at installation to be the largest optical solar instrument ever built in Canada. The telescope was originally acquired for the solar eclipse, which took place in Labrador that same year. After that project closed, it traveled to Ottawa and was positioned at the west backyard of the main observatory building until it was dismantled between 1971 and 74. Even the architecture of this telescopic building is unusual, mimicking a barn with two mini house-like vents on the roof. It may have been designed this way to fit in with the rest of the CEF landscape. The Equatorial Observatory, built in 1914, was placed at the east side front yard, which would house the transept telescope. This was utilized for scanning stars to achieve precise timekeeping. The construction of this building was also made of the same stone as the main observatory in order to be visually associated. This film footage is from 1919. Ewart also designed the chief astronomer's residence, constructed in 1911, to originally allow astronomer William King to remain close to his work while housing his family. Two azimuth buildings, north and south, mark the prime meridian. However, today only the south still stands, with the north being dismantled during the road expansion to 4 lanes on Klauninger Avenue. Lastly, the geodetic building that we saw before was located to the west side of the observatory, built in the same year as the Equatorial Observatory. From a satellite image taken in 2014, one can see the excavated underground tunnel that was built during the 1960s for the seismology staff to access the main seismograph machine from either the geodetic building to the west or from the observatory at the southeast. Again, the observatory dome in this image is prevalent from above, where the workings of astronomy would happen, for the science of the age. This is also where Mary Gray, the last astronomer of the Dominion Observatory, would carry out her daily research, until her enthusiasm for the science would move towards the continued preservation for the historic telescopic equipment and for the building itself. Mary Gray, née Schreiber, began her research at the observatory from around 1958 until her transfer or partial retirement in 1973-74 under Chief EMR Observatory Director Dr. John Hodgson. Born in 1927 in the town of Chipman, New Brunswick, she studied engineering in pursuit of a scientific career. Her identity as Dr. Mary Gray was in fact only honorary among colleagues. In reality, she was not a doctorate in science, but had received her Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of New Brunswick instead. As for taking any official astronomy courses, it is thought that by her colleagues as well that she was self-taught. Her career began at the Geodetic Survey of Canada during the 1950s. The main building for the GSD, as previously mentioned, was located beside the observatory in Ottawa. The same department had been directed in the past since 1872 by Chief Astronomer King, and would continue to be simultaneously while he was first director of the observatory. From 1940 until 1985, one of the most important but not well-known activity of the Geodetic Survey was the first order field of astronomy that had controlled the Laplace azimuth. These official geographic points were to regulate the triangulation and deflection determinations for geodesial studies that had been configured by astronomical coordinates. Specifically, during the 10 years between 1941 to 1950, and when Gray may have worked there for some of that time, astronomy was active at the GSD for the astronomic positioning of northern mapping with utilization of these points. Therefore, it was through the GSD department in which Gray obtained her first experience in practical astronomy. However, as Gray has stated herself, that her passion for astronomy only really took off like fire after moving to the Dominion Observatory in Ottawa. This career move was also influenced through her affiliation from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, of which she joined during her days at the GSD. Gray's professional research conducted at the observatory was primarily with the 15-inch telescope. However, like her predecessors at the observatory, notably Miriam Burland, who had been the first woman astronomer at this institution, Gray also provided a public education function there. For example, often Saturday evening stargazing in the countryside at the observatory was reserved for the public. And in Hamilton, a Royal Astronomical letter written by Robert Lang in 1970 corresponds with Ms. Gray, indicating that the observatory was to go to a go-to place for further historic information on Canada's past astronomy functions. Ms. Gray's outgoing personality reached beyond her main astronomical duties while at the observatory, taking time to teach the public and students in a local area of importance of the building and its equipment. When the observatory was originally on the outskirts of Ottawa, visitors were known to travel there for the night sky viewings as well. Especially the 15-inch retractable telescope would allow visitors to examine the inner architecture of the top dome. In a more recent statement of recollection, Robert Dick, a past university professor and educator at Carleton University, with Gray at the museum as well, with other guides, Michael Lebec, who also works at the Science and Tech Museum today, and Tim Cole, recall viewing through the historic equipment for the first time, stating, "Where else could you look through such a large professional telescope and see the planets so clearly?" The answer, of course, was nowhere else but the Dominion Observatory. When the technological improvements allowed professional astronomers access to larger telescopes, this caused the federal government to transfer all astronomy activities from the observatory. The transfer of responsibility went to the National Research Council of Canada, located elsewhere in Ottawa, in 1970. After that year, public education became the only function the observatory served due to its interest in its national significant architecture and in connection to the historic Canadian astronomy equipment, considered to be the heart of the building. However, this education at the observatory finally stopped as well, when public access at the dome and the 15-inch telescope became a fire code violation. With no official astronomy function and no public education, the telescopes of the Dominion Observatory were at a standstill, until Gray made an unprecedented and controversial decision. In the fall of 1974, the 15-inch telescope was removed and placed under the stewardship of Gray, who assumed a new role as curator of physical sciences at the National Canadian Science and Technology Museum. The museum's acquisition of especially this instrument and the addition of the solar telescope and the Equatorial telescope would in turn leave the observatory on its own, with only the seismology staff filling it. Gray's interest in the history and heritage of the Dominion Observatory and related telescopes was very evident in her informed talks on the history of the architecture and the social fabric that tied these constellations of history together at the Science and Technology Museum. A prime example of her efforts to preserve the meaningful information behind the observatory's past and present architectural existence could be seen in her installation at the museum. This occurred in recreated observatory so that the 15-inch telescope could be operational again for historic educational use. This building, which opened January 15, 1975, eventually was dedicated to Helen Sawyer Hogg in 1989. This recognition given to Sawyer Hogg was in part for her promotion of astronomy at the museum. In addition, for the same accomplishment, Gray also received the Civil Service Association of Canada's prestigious Merit Award that same year. At the same time, due to Gray's exposure to the public and her interest in astronomy, in addition to her unexpected passing at the age of only 62, we now know that she never retired from her cause of the Dominion Observatory. In fact, she kept writing as an editor for the Sky News newsletter for astronomical information. The same newsletter eventually turned into Sky News magazine, of which she continued to write until her death in July 1996. As well, she wrote the stargazing column in the Ottawa Citizen and conducted interviews with CBC radio staff and with other members of the public and astronomers in order to vocally gather and publicize information on astronomy for a national legacy in this pursuit. This in turn strengthened the educational program at the museum, not only through her curation, but for educating the importance of why the Ottawa Dominion Observatory telescope had so much merit towards Canada's science in astronomy. The Hogg-Sawyer Observatory continued to house the 15-inch telescope for over 30 years, of public viewing sessions as well. However, recently in December 2016, as part of the new museum renovations for this fall 2017 year opening, the Sawyer-Hogg Observatory was dismantled. Currently, the 15-inch telescope has been placed in storage with an indefinite date as to when it will return for educational display or use again. However, there is a possibility that the other observatory-related telescopes may now have their debut as a display within the new exhibits. At the Enercan Library on Booth Street, information was found while at the museum. Gray held various offices within the Ottawa Centre branch of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada at the same time between 1964 and 1977. This included a term when she was president in 1975 to 76 and a subsequent term in 1986 to 1988, when she nationally chaired the Committee on Publications, in which she wrote notes on the Dominion Observatory for the Journal of 6870. Her career at the museum was also devoted to the promotion of public interest and to the knowledge that surrounded astronomy. Through teaching, broadcasting, and writing, in addition, Gray was also influenced within the staff of the observatory, which compelled her to compile archival fonds on Miriam Burland. As Gray believed that Burland was one of the women who pioneered in the field of astronomy, and believed she was a forerunning example on publicizing and teaching the public about the Canadian history of the astronomy program at the Dominion Observatory, even before herself. Gray's career followed suit to that of Sawyer Hogg's and Burland's, for at the observatory it not only allowed her to publish research, but to also interact on both the local and national disseminating history level, all while advocating for the architecture and the tools of her trade in a vouch to continue their preservation. These pieces of knowledge instilled in her were exported into conducting tours to the public concerning the inner workings of the observatory, which would reference scientific studies and discoveries that were presently being made with Ottawa's astronomy. As well, later in her life at the museum, she continued to teach and advocate on the national Canadian level for preserving the Dominion Observatory's past and present building history through the telescopic Dominion artifacts. As great as the museum is, though, the architecture of the Dominion Observatory is still thought of as key to possible future tours in this historic context. Especially this is felt now by astronomy interest groups because of the loss of the Sawyer-Hogg Observatory. And because the observatory's situated geographical placement, which adds unparalleled value to its related telescopic artifacts. In which the latter's visual language of architecture still can intertwine with the past housing of such specific Canadian scientific instruments that are attached to Ottawa's local Dominion history too. The influence behind the decision to divorce the telescopic equipment from the architecture of Canada's first national observatory had been Gray's. She went forward with this move because these artifacts were housed in the main research dome of the observatory, which became so popular with the public that, as explained earlier, a fire code became the concern. Access to the dome was limited by two narrow curved stairwells on each side of the dome, which meant that the visiting public had to enter that for the sought-after area in single file. This meant that many historic buildings, such as the observatory, were also placed under new limitations when it came to housing staff and accommodating visitors to such institutions when these fire codes came in place during the 1970s. The changes occurred when they were either disallowed to such visitations or architectural heritage to conform. This often resulted in the destruction of important elements of architecture or an addition of newly encroaching architectural elements in order to meet safety standards. For the Dominion Observatory, under heritage protection, it was just as important in 1970 as it was when it was first built in 1902 to maintain its overall character of prestige. Some of these past visitors have been noted to subsequently even pursue careers in astronomy due to these experiences. This may be taken as an attestment to what Gray worked on so hard to achieve in her lifetime, despite some of her contemporaries' objections. Perhaps she imbued a new life for such important instruments that may have otherwise gone astray, if not removed from the observatory. However, now that this telescope is removed, is there still enough a linkage between memory and the Dominion Observatory itself? Perhaps this controversial transfer of the 15-inch telescope was a successful move, but one has to wonder about the other implications. After all, the range of programs at the Sawyer-Hogg Observatory, when the telescope was up in action for the last 30 years, did in fact increase the number of visitors at the museum. The museum became the go-to place for the best economic viewing of the skies instead of the Dominion Observatory. It also became one of the few institutions with that level of commitment to the public education in astronomy in Canada, with such a scientific education mandate. However, what would be interesting to know is if by Gray initiating and curating such a museum program, did this impart more interest for women to enter astronomy? Also, perhaps one of the histories the Dominion Observatory architecture may need to publicize more is that of the rare opportunity this past institution had in the role of women and their interesting careers in the science of astronomy that is little heard of. This is other than Gray's influential memoriam naming of the museum, the Sawyer-Hogg Educational Observatory at the museum. From another angle, though, the Dominion Observatory can also be seen with two opposing sides of thought. The scientific use of the observatory having authority over the natural surroundings of the Central Experimental Farm, and the work conducted within a more important than building itself. However, this is no ordinary building. The observatory was not just an edifice to house scientific research. The solid and grand Romanesque revival style of architecture used in its construction was specifically chosen to represent the importance of Canada's scientific pursuits and to underline the permanency and nationalism of the young country. Astronomy, seismology, and geomagnetism were not simply important areas of research contained within the observatory. They were a means of strengthening Canada's independence from Britain. The symbolism of the Dominion Observatory as expressed in its striking architecture was of equal importance to Canada as the science research it was to contain. We can argue that the Canadian experimental farm is a highly significant cultural landscape that is worthy of consideration by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Many agree with this wholeheartedly, with this concept of a rural and urban open space that should be protected at both the national and local level, since it houses buildings such as the observatory. However, more emphasis should be placed on the architecture that still sits in the CEF, such as the observatory and its related buildings surrounding it. The observatory and the landscape are married in history. One begets the other, just as the telescopic scientific equipment is related to the structures as well. It also gives reason to why the observatory was not only a place for Mary Gray to conduct astronomical research, but also a place to advocate for the preservation of such history, as well as the main functional scientific discovering instruments, that being the telescopes. In turn, she was able to help establish the observatory, its architecture, and the scientific discoveries through such equipment as being nationally significant within Canada today. Thank you.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions for Sharon, she'll be available during the break and after the meeting as well. So we're going to go ahead and take a very short break. I'm thinking 7 minutes or so. I'd like to have you back here by 9 p.m. So just a few notes. First of all, everyone has to be out of this room by 10 p.m. It's one of those nights. So we are going to be rushing a little bit. Second off, we do have door prize tickets this month, so you can come pick some up real quick. We have some very special door prizes tonight. We have a Galileo scope from 2009 that was donated, and this telescope right here, I don't have all the details about it, but there are a few more experienced members who can help you with that. We also have a very, very generous member who cleaned out his stuff and donated all of these lovely magazines. So if you are drawn, you can grab more than one. Okay, so up next we'll just have a quick little GA update.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. And just one quick note, nice presentation from Sharon there, and it's kind of interesting to think that in the room right now there are 4, possibly 5 if Sylvie's here, people who use that 15-inch telescope at the Science and Tech Museum for public astronomy programs, so kind of interesting. There's my one solar or lunar image for the evening, and then we get right into the General Assembly 2017. Now we started this back in the fall of 2015. So here we are, how many 17 months later, whatever it is, we've got less than 3 months to go to the GA. We're doing the online registration. We've started that right now. And we've got only 30 people have registered so far. So what we need is for the Ottawa Centre members especially to get cracking and get with the online registration. You can go through our website. All the instructions are there. If you hit the word registration, that's the hot link. That'll take you right to the Zone 4 automatic registration site, and you can choose all your options there. If you want to make a donation online there, in addition to your registration, you can do that. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to participate as fully as possible. Let's go to the next one, please, Chris. So here's how we've settled out our schedule. We've got a really great program on the go. A couple of things have changed because we had a couple of people who had to drop out from the lineup for one reason or another. So this is the final version we've come up with. And a couple of things to take note of. Still to bear in mind, we've got people like Ken Hewitt-White coming in for our keynote address first thing on Friday morning. He called me up the other night. He says, "Hey, I just saw that schedule. Didn't you have me at 11 o'clock?" Yeah. In the morning, I said, "Yeah, well, you know how it's kind of a bait and switch, eh?" So, but should be good fun. I mean, we've got people coming in from Algonquin Radio Observatory, the Canadian Space Agency. We've got our who's the other one I'm trying to think of? Our Ruth Northcott lecturer, Dr. Eric Steinbring, coming in from the West Coast. And if you go online, you're going to see the links to these people. And you can find out what all the presentations are about. And of course, on our Sunday evening banquet, in the green at the bottom right there, the awards banquet, all the national awards will be handed out at that time. But Dr. Nadine Masset from the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope will be there. So she can't wait to get started with us. She's from Quebec. She's done a lot of work with Meteor Observatory. So she's done a lot of outreach in Hawaii as well, so it'll be quite an interesting program on the go. So we've got it starts off on the Friday morning, all day Friday. We've got the downtown tours in the middle, so what we did was, part of the reason for that was, of course, we've got 400 members in Ottawa, all right, and we have a lot of visitors coming in from out of town, but we're giving the out of town people an opportunity while they're here to at least go in and see some of the sites downtown, some of the museums and that, but also if there are people who have to work on the Friday, we're trying to minimize the impact for you as much as possible. So then when you come in on Saturday, we've got a nice Saturday program, and we're going right to supper time, and then it's a free evening to get down to Parliament Hill if you want to for the Canada Day celebrations. All day Sunday, we've got the annual general meeting. Of course, that's the main purpose of the General Assembly, is the annual general meeting. So all the members should be there. You can participate in discussion on various aspects of what's going on. If you're a voting member, you can cast your ballot at that meeting, and that goes for the morning. There, we're also working up a small guest room activity. So if you have people who are coming with you to the GA who aren't members, we're going to put on a film there. So if you want to bring your laptop in the room while you're looking at the film, it's what is it, Tim? It's about Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaiian Starlight.
Oh, Hawaiian Starlight. So if you want to watch the video, bring your laptop in. You can tap away on that while you're doing that. If you want to bring your knitting in at the same time, so it gives you a nice some quiet time on the Sunday morning. Okay, and yeah, and then we've got a full program on the go there. Okay, we'll go to the next one, please. Okay, here are the prices, and I'm getting close to my 7 minutes. I'm at 4.5. I'm keeping a track of it. That's a Dodge, I have no idea. Okay, but anyway, so there it is. So $60 for the main member registration. If you're bringing a guest who is a non-member, and remember, family members are members, right? So okay, so $35 for the guests, and you see the price for the barbecue and the awards banquet. So we're hoping that as many people as possible will opt for some of these activities, especially the awards banquet. That should be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be a really exciting evening. All right, if we go to the next one, we have some merchandise here. Tim's over on the side there. Tim is the vice chair for the General Assembly, and we've got thanks. So we've got these the mugs in with our crest. With our crest on it, very nicely subdued crest, so it's nice and stately, and we have this beautiful patch. It's an embroidered patch, but it looks like it's I can't believe how fine the weave is on this. I mean, I spent all night on my loom, and I didn't get it quite that fine a weave, right? But like Sheldon, eh? Okay, so those are available. Mugs are $8. The crests are $5. Please buy one. Please send Tim home with an empty box from these darn mugs.
I counted before I came. I have 17 mugs with logos on them. I bought one of these. So you have no excuse.
Yeah. And even if you're not going to the GA, or even if you are, please buy some of the stuff. It helps support the programs that we're doing. Something to bear in mind, of course, is that people who are coming from out of town, they have the transportation costs, their accommodation costs while they're here. We get off on that a little bit. So if you can afford to spend a little extra or throw donations our way, it'll help us put on a program. Worthy of the time. Go away. But on that note, I mean, he's throwing his coins there, but just to let you know that of the people who have registered online, Tim and I were the first ones to register, and we've bought our own full packages, so we're paying our own freight on this.
Plus donations.
Yeah. Okay. So what we've got here, these caps, these great caps with the Canada flag under the bill, as they call it, or the William, if you're snooty. All right. And our crest that goes on the top there. T-shirts. Okay, Chris, we could go to the next one, please. Oh yes, my Professor Twinkleboom. If anybody's ever seen me doing my astronomy programs or whatever, whether I'm doing adults, whether I'm doing kids, Professor Twinkleboom comes with me. So Professor Twinkleboom says, I don't know how Tim was able to do that, but it's great. Thanks, Chris. Now something else, one little extra here. Okay, check this out. Stand by. That's for Jonathan Buchanan sitting up in the back who did the animations on that for us. Well done, Jonathan. Okay, and we have a little something extra that Chris wanted to mention. At the GA, what he's done is he's taken these photographs for the 1964, 19-something or other, 19-something or other, and the whatever year General Assemblies, all these group photos. We don't have everybody identified. The people that are circled there are people that Sharon mentioned in her program, in her presentation, her dissertation. Right? There we go again. There's Mary Gray over on the right. Ian Halliday up on the left. Who's down at the bottom, Chris? Jack Locke. That's what I said. All right? And you notice some of them have yellow names marked. These photographs are done up as posters sitting on the tables on the side. If you know who some of these people are, write your suggestion on a tag and stick it on. Let's go to the next one. Do you have others there? All right? There we go. I was actually at this General Assembly, but somebody had to be at the registration desk, so the person who was sitting there, I went and said, go get in the picture. So I wasn't in the picture, but I'm there in spirit for sure. Right? There's Isabella. There. Okay. Is that it? That's it. All right. That's it. So, anyway, the idea is, if you can register, please, register soon so we can start to get a feel for the numbers. Try not to leave it to the last minute. It'll make our jobs a lot easier. We have, as you can imagine, we have a lot of things on the go in terms of preparation for the GA, and it's a lot. So whatever you can do to kind of ease the strain would be appreciated. All right, Kelly, thank you very much. Oh, questions? Yes?
There's a star party Friday night at the farm.
Yeah, there's a star party at the usual location by the Diefenbunker, because we have a Diefenbunker tour that at the same time. So they're putting on they've given us a special rate for that. We're not charging. We got that kind of figured into the GA fees, so it should be interesting. All right. Anything else? Okay. All right. If you have any questions, Tim and I will be around. So please come and buy a mug and a patch. All right. Thanks.
Don't make me bring them home.
All right, so let's finish this off beautifully. Paul.
Actually, could we get some of those lights on the screen off, if you wouldn't mind? I guess we do mind. Yeah. There we go. That's good. All right. Well, hi everybody. I promised to make this quick since we ran into a bit of a scheduling problem earlier tonight. So. If I'm flying through things, you'll forgive me. I've been doing some work up on imaging up in Leo, because finally we're starting to get some clear weather, which is really nice. So we had a few good nights, certainly in March there, where the skies opened up. And Leo is moving into prominence. Leo is rising currently around 9 o'clock, and it is nice and high in the sky around 10:30, 11 o'clock. And springtime is the season for galaxies here in the northern hemisphere. Between Leo and Virgo, I mean, there's just a raft of galaxies in those two constellations. They're nice and widely removed from the obscuring light of the Milky Way, and so it gives us sort of a window out through our galaxy to observe these other galaxies, these very distant galaxies from our own there. So. I encourage you, especially if you're new to astronomy, to if you want to get out and see some really cool gems of the evening sky there. Leo is a great place to look for galaxies. There's numerous prominent galaxies that you can see even with a small telescope. Even perhaps a little guy like that. Will let you see some of these things. I mean, mind you, they're going to look like little smudges and that, but it's not so much what you're looking at. It's what it is, your understanding of what it is, that these are galaxies like our own Milky Way often, but many, many millions of light years away. So with that being said, we'll move into Leo there. And what I thought I'd do is show you where some of these galaxies are. I'm going to use the remote here. And to sort of help you pinpoint where in the sky to look, and then to give you a bit of a look when you take an imaging camera and a larger telescope to these galaxies, what they actually look like a bit closer up. All right. Huh?
Oh, the other remote.
We have a new one.
Oh, the other remote.
This one.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so it's the big button. Ah, super. Okay, so Leo is a very prominent constellation, a fairly prominent constellation at this time of the year. You can see here. There we go. It's is there a laser on this one as well?
No, first remote.
All right, partner. All right, here we go. Okay, so yeah, Leo's a very prominent constellation. It's you can certainly see where it gets its you know the idea that that it is a lion from the body. Regulus, the bright star here, marks where the front paws are. Regulus, one of the brightest stars in the sky. In fact, I think it's the 20th or 21st brightest star in the sky, and it's about 79 light years from Earth. Makes Leo very easy to identify, and if you can make out that basic shape, which is fairly straightforward, then you can find the areas that we'll be talking about. So, okay, now there we go. So I'll have a look at 3 different areas there. I mean, there are many galaxies in this region there, but I'm concentrating mostly on the more prominent ones, the ones that you can see with small telescopes, and in a few cases even with binoculars if you've got a steady hand and if you've got fair-sized binoculars. So the first one, first group that I'll look at is the Leo trio, or the Leo triplet, as it's called. This is probably the most well-known of the bunch there. And the Leo trio essentially consists of 3 fairly large galaxies, very similar in size to our own Milky Way, and they're all about 32 to 33 million light years away. These galaxies are not just aligned to us, you know, by chance, you know, as a visual alignment, but they are actually physically close, relatively close to each other, and so they feel each other's gravitational tug. And it's actually quite evident when you look in close at those galaxies what those gravitational forces are doing to the shapes of those galaxies. So in the view of a small telescope, you might see a view like this. You would see these objects as, you know, kind of fuzzy objects there, with the 2 Messier objects. Actually, I should label them here. Get used to these remotes here. 2 Messier galaxies are the largest in the group, the M96 and M65. Even through a small telescope, you can see they're sort of fuzzy patches, but they have brightish cores there. Whereas the other one, up here, NGC 3628, is an equally large galaxy, but much dimmer. These galaxies were discovered by Charles Messier, and it's surprising actually that he didn't see this one at the same time there. This was discovered a couple of years later. Surprising given the close proximity of the 2. So this is the view that you would see through, you know, roughly through a small telescope, approximating the field of view. If you put in an appropriate eyepiece, you can actually capture all of these in a single view. But if you want a closer look, you have to use a larger telescope and a camera. We can have a look at things like at M65. You can see the prominent dust lanes. This is a galaxy very much like our own Milky Way, with a prominent central core and prominent dust lanes through it. M66, also a spiral galaxy. It's a sort of next door neighbor. It's interesting when you look at this galaxy that you can see that there's something amiss with it. You can see several distortions in the arms. You can see the wavy lines. You can see this spiral arm actually looks to be elevated above the disk there. It's believed that this galaxy had a close interaction with one of the other neighbors, NGC 3628, in the relatively recent past. And these galaxies, as I say, are physically relatively close to each other, and so they continue to interact with one another, and eventually they'll, you know, a long way down the road, they'll probably wind up merging into one super galaxy. But you can see, as I say, you can see the distortions in the spiral arms there. You can also see that there's some very bright knots of star formation. Both of those characteristics in a galaxy like this, the dust lanes and the star clusters, are indicative of gravitational interaction and enhanced star forming activity in a galaxy. All right. There you go. Oh, that's kind of grainy. NGC 3628. It was the other member of the trio there. This one is an edge-on spiral galaxy. It's you can see it has a very prominent dust lane there, but its disk is also showing signs of warping. The projector seems a little hot today. There's a lot of graininess in there, but you can see the general outline of the galaxy there is the disk is kind of like a warped pancake almost, and very, very prominent dust lanes there. You can see these are all as we have in our Milky Way, but very prominent in this particular galaxy. All right. The next group there is the M95 M96 and M105. So if you've ever thought about doing a Messier marathon, Leo and Virgo are great regions there, because I think about a fifth to maybe almost a quarter of the Messier objects are contained within those two constellations. As you can see, this group is our previous group was just there. This one is just again along the bottom of the body of the lion there, centered in this area there, and it contains a number of galaxies, again, within a comparable field here. This is, again, trying to simulate a view through a small telescope there. You can see, keep pressing the wrong button. There we go. You can see M105 there, M96 and M95. Also in this region, you can see that there are other galaxies, again, throughout this field, but notably in this area here. So we'll have a look at this guy first, and then we'll work our way down the formation like that. There we go. So this is, get that right button there. There we go. So M105 there, and the two galaxies that were nearby, NGC galaxies there. These are both elliptical galaxies. This is actually a lenticular elliptical, and this is a true elliptical. Elliptical galaxies, kind of the opposite side of the coin from spiral galaxies. They don't have a lot of free dust and gas in them, so there's not a lot of star formation that typically goes on in an elliptical galaxy. So you can see not a lot of structure or anything like that in either of these two, compared to this neighboring little spiral down here, which again is, you can see the spiral arms, and it's got dust lanes as well. So. But M105 also is known to harbor a supermassive black hole at its core that weighs in at about 200 million times the mass of our sun. So it's not a lightweight by any means there. And again, these are all visible with reasonably small telescopes. All right, a bit of a closer look. This is M96. This is a rather pretty galaxy. It's almost not quite face on, but you can see there's a lot of structure in there. You can see the dust lanes evident inside there. Quite an extensive dust disk. And one of the things I really like about this galaxy, I find really interesting there, is you can see that formation there. That's actually a distant spiral galaxy in behind M96. We're just seeing it through the dusty disk of the galaxy. It's kind of edge on there, but it almost seems to align with that spiral arm. But it is, in fact, an independent galaxy in the background of M96. Okay, moving along. M95. This is one of my favorites in the whole area there, in terms of it being photogenic and just an interesting galaxy. It's obviously a spiral galaxy, but it's a barred spiral. You can see it has a very, very prominent bar feature emanating from the center. You can see there's some really active dust lanes in there. This is an almost face-on galaxy to us, so it gives us the opportunity when we study this with long-duration imaging that we get a chance to look at in detail at things like the star-forming regions, the dust lanes that are prominent throughout. And again, just how the disk is being affected by gravitational interaction with the other close members of this particular group. So, yeah, that's a pretty galaxy. And in what was it, 2012, there was actually a supernova that was visible there, easily visible through amateur telescopes and photographable. I know a few of us here managed to get pictures of that supernova back then, so it's an area that is known to have a few supernova outbursts. So that's M95. I think, yeah. I've got one more for you there. This one is the most challenging of the lot. It's a bit of a freaky little galaxy, and it's right there. It's really easy to find the location because this galaxy is butted up almost right up against Regulus there, which at the same time also makes it very hard to observe. Case in point, I'll show you. There we go. Yeah, Regulus is very bright. This galaxy is very faint, so you need a long exposure to capture this, and that means really overexposing Regulus there. And it's pretty on its own right there, but this, you can actually see this with a telescope. It's, like I say, it's all the other galaxies that we've looked at in Leo are all on the order of 30 to 35 million light years distant. This is a close one to us. This is actually a dwarf galaxy that is being gravitationally drawn by the Milky Way's gravity. So it's only about 850,000 light years away, about a third of the distance to the Andromeda Galaxy. And some believe that it's already had some gravitational and tidal interactions with our own Milky Way galaxy. But you can actually see this. It's very difficult. If you do try to go out and see this, like I say, it's really easy to find Regulus. What you might try to do is just position your scope to put Regulus out of the field of your eyepiece there, and that'll get rid of a lot of the glare there and might give you a chance to see the little dwarf galaxy there. So, yeah. So those are just a quick tour of some of the stuff that's in the sky currently there. As I say, you know, Leo is prominent now. This is the time to when it's at its best, when it's high in the sky at around 10:30, 11 o'clock. And now that the weather's starting to get warmer as well, it certainly makes it a lot easier to stand out and check out some of these gems out there. So I have one other thing I added this one. It's not really related to the talk, but again, I'm looking at this from a point of view of folks getting out and trying to observe these things. Two related objects, just because they're in this part of the sky and they're super easy to observe even with binoculars. All these galaxies that we've talked about here, like I said, unless you've got really jumbo binoculars there, you need a telescope to see them. Whereas these guys, you can actually see these with the naked eye, and they're best observed actually with a good pair of binoculars. You've got the Beehive cluster here, and you've got the Coma star cluster. They're both open star clusters there, and very obvious, especially in the dark sky. But the nice thing with these things is that because they're so obvious, you don't even need a totally rural dark sky to see them. They're quite easily visible there. So yeah, if you're out and about poking around Leo, hunting for galaxies, be sure to check out the clusters there as well. Thank you very much.
All right, so for observations, we don't have a very long list, but I promise you it's worth it. So next month, we're going to have a bit of an observation extravaganza. So you have that to look forward to.
Yes, okay. So for starters, we had a really rough winter, so this is actually the only image I got for about 4 months. But from a personal standpoint, it's really significant to me because it actually is about 1 year, almost to the day, from when I started with this very same object. And some of you may recall my earlier image, and it's just gorgeous. I love this image. In particular, I actually kind of appreciated finding some double stars and things around there. And it kind of goes to show what a bit of experience can do with the same equipment. And as far as the weather is concerned, I was working on some significant upgrades, so I apologize. So Globular Cluster M3 was my first use of auto-guiding with my upgrades. It is about 39,000 light years away and contains approximately 500,000 stars within a diameter of about 190 light years. So it's incredibly dense. Also contains a large population of variable stars. The Milky Way has, roughly 120, 150 globular clusters in it, M3 being one of them, but just sort of keep that in mind for later. So, having gotten auto-guiding going and a nice test with the M3, I decided to see, how deep and how faint I could go. And we're familiar with the local group. And Paul went on and talked about the Leo group. Just so happened that I am focusing on the Virgo cluster. So as a set, we live in the suburbs, and Virgo is something like the downtown. There are many, many thousands of galaxies. So I focused on the granddaddy of them all in the Virgo cluster, M87, which is an obscenely large elliptical galaxy. In terms of diameter, it's actually about the same width and breadth of the Milky Way, but whereas the Milky Way is a plane, as a spiral galaxy, the elliptical is spherical. So it actually contains about 500 times the mass of the Milky Way, most of which is in gas. Only about 1/6 of the mass is actually stars. And if you look around in the supercluster itself, every single little blob is itself a galaxy, some of which I went a little nuts and identified. So the Virgo supercluster, I believe, had notes was about maybe a population of around 12,000 galaxies. And I couldn't hardly believe myself. I was picking up things around magnitude 18, 19 there. Now looking in a little closer, the Virgo A, M87, has a population of globular clusters in the tens of thousands, about 12 to 15,000 globular clusters. And I believe they're kind of dotted around here as well. A few satellite galaxies as well. And there isn't particularly a lot of detail or things going on in an elliptical galaxy like this, but what really, really surprised me is what was going on right here in the center. Because when I got this poem and I did a little processing, I picked up the jet emanating from the supermassive black hole at its core. Thank you. This particular black hole is one of the largest supermassive black holes that we know of, ranging of a mass between 3.8 to 6.6 billion solar masses. It consumes approximately 91 Earth masses of material a day, about 1 solar mass every 10 years. What it can't eat gets belched out and entangled in magnetic fields into these jets, which extend approximately 5,000 light years. The blue color is actually synchrotron radiation. It's not the kind of light which is emitted from a thermal excitation, but rather when electrons are accelerated at nearly the speed of light through a magnetic field which alters their orientation.
Fix the microphone.
Their angular velocity changes, they send off photons in a spectrum that follows a power law. Okay. So, and it happens to be blue. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so up next, we have a short segment on International Astronomy Day. I believe Jim is going to talk to this.
Right, so some of you may or may not know that every spring there is an event that goes on around the globe called International Astronomy Day. And Ottawa has actually been a fairly strong center for this activity. It was started in 1973 in California, and it has since been taken up by the Astronomical League in the US. They say what date it's going to be. There's one in the fall, but the spring one is the main one. The whole purpose of the event is to promote astronomy to the general public. It's an opportunity for amateurs like us to get out and expose people who have never seen a telescope before to looking at things in the sky, and hopefully get them interested as well. So most of the activities that happen around the globe involve some type of a free public activity where people can come out and look through a telescope. So this year it is on April 29th, which is coming up pretty quickly. And there's a theme this year, and that's the solar eclipse, which is coming in August. The big green button.
Yeah.
So these are just some example pictures from events from past years that have happened in Ottawa. I've put my daughter's picture there in the upper left because she's kind of adorable. And she's wearing a toque because that particular year, I'm sure Jim would remember, it was really cold. That was probably mid-April. But this is the event that goes on at Chapters at Silver City. It's hosted by the OAOG group. There's also activities that happen at the museum, hosted by the RASC. But this kind of gives you an idea of the public event that we try to put on. So if you want to get involved, and I really strongly encourage you to think about getting involved, you can talk to Chris about what the activities will be with RASC. I'm assuming there will be stuff through the day in the museum and solar scopes during the day if it's clear. And then at night there'll be telescopes outside. And that's, I believe, Chris, here at this location?
Yep.
We're waiting for confirmation from the Stowe Museum staff.
Ah, okay. So still waiting for confirmation, but fingers crossed that it'll be like in past years. And then similarly, the OAOG is going to be having a sidewalk astronomy at the Chapters store, the museum, the parking lot next to Chapters at Silver City. And that'll be an all-day event as well. So solar viewing during the day and looking at the moon. I think Jupiter is going to be pretty prominent this year, so we'll be looking at Jupiter and then maybe some deep sky stuff as well. And all of this depends on volunteers. Without volunteers, it can't happen. So if you feel like you want to get involved, maybe not just for yourself, but to help encourage children and other people to get involved in astronomy and science in general, then please talk to Chris or myself and find out how you can help. Right? Thank you.
So another thing is, if you'd like to get involved and you don't know Chris or Jim or whatever, you can write to me. My email is always on the website, just because International Astronomy Day only happens once a year, and I love it. It's a great opportunity to really get out there and get involved. So this is a beginner's night sky course. I believe it's given by Pat Brown. And so this is all of the information. It takes place on April 21st. I believe that's the first class. Then there are 4 observing nights that are to be determined afterwards depending on weather. So all the information is up here. You can contact Sarah O'Grady. And once again, if you don't remember this information, you can just write to me and I'll send it to you. So quickly, Estelle's pick of the month. I did a bit of research on this because I had no idea what this meant. So the book is The Hunt for Vulcan by Thomas Levinson. So up until the 20th century, physicists relied on Newtonian physics to understand the world in which we lived, as well as the solar system. And so the knowledge that we had from Newton led to the discovery of Uranus and eventually to the discovery of Neptune. But at that point in time, they were attacking the question of Mercury's orbit, which was going way too fast for anything that Newtonian physics could explain. And so astronomers at that time assumed that there was another planet that was interfering with Mercury's orbit. And so they went on the hunt for a planet near Mercury that they called Vulcan, because they were so sure that it existed. It wasn't until 1915 that Einstein published his theory of relativity that eventually explained the way that Mercury was moving. I found this quote online that I really liked. So the hunt for Vulcan is an object lesson in how science is done and why scientists sometimes get things wrong, and ultimately why they get things right. And I think that's what we're all here for. On that note, membership, as usual, regular membership $75, family membership $70, and youth membership is $45. All the benefits are listed here. You have access to the Ted Bean Loan Library, the Stan Mod Book Library, and the site of the Fred Lossing Observatory. You also get these 4 publications, club information. As usual, the meetings are webcast online on Ustream. You can go back and watch them anytime. Audience 108, not bad. I know this was a bit of a difficult evening to get through, but I think we made the best of it. So thank you to all our speakers. And as usual, we'll be meeting at Gracie's right after the meeting. If you'd like to come meet a few people, discuss. It's right down Aviation Parkway, turn right on Ogilvie Road, and it's right there. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to those of you who joined online. And I hope you have a great evening, and I hope to see you at Gracie's.